Welcome to another segment of my biology videos as we continue looking at the nutrient cycles. So I want to show you how you can answer a sample question on the nutrient cycle that we talked about, the carbon cycle. So the first question there simply says that with the aid of a label diagram, describe the carbon cycle. So the one shown with the aid or help of a label diagram, you describe the carbon cycle. Now, of course, one thing that you need to do, the one should use a well-labeled diagram, to describe the carbon cycle. Of course, I can accompany it with a few explanation. So what I can simply say that, first of all, we can slightly define what the carbon cycle is. So I can say the carbon cycle, is a cycle that, shows, how carbon is circulated, in the environment. So like we said, the various parts where carbon is actually found in the environment. So the carbon cycle is a cycle that shows, how carbon is circulated in the environment. So I can simply say that the processes, that help to add carbon back into the atmosphere, include respiration. We can talk about decay. If you want, you can say decomposition, and combustion. Yeah. Then of course, the process that remove carbon from the atmosphere is photosynthesis. So once you describe that, I can simply say the following diagram. So I can say the following diagram illustrates the carbon cycle. So what have I talked about so far? I've only defined what the carbon cycle is. I've talked about processes that help to add carbon, in the atmosphere. And I've also talked about processes that help to remove carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is mainly photosynthesis. So using the few words that I've put up now, I can now, put up a well-labeled diagram, because the question was saying with the aid of a labeled diagram, describe the carbon cycle. And remember, that was carrying 6 marks in the exam. So we can quickly, try to do that. If you remember from my previous video, we can simply say that carbon dioxide. So there we can simply write and simply say carbon, dioxide in the atmosphere. So we have carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then of course we can have what we are calling as being plants. So we can have plants there. Then we can also put up there what we are calling as being animals. Specifically, you can call them as being herbivores. Then I can have what I'm calling as being fungi and bacteria. Can enclose them. Then this side, maybe I can have what I'm calling as being fossil fuels. So we can also enclose them. So it's a matter of now just connecting, by means of, direction arrows, the processes that help to add and remove, they are accompanied with those words. So remember here, carbon dioxide can be removed by plants in a process that we are calling as being photosynthesis. So that is going to help carbon dioxide to be removed when plants carry out photosynthesis. At the same time, remember that plants during the night time, they do carry out a process we are calling as being a respiration. So we can therefore say there we can have respiration. Plants can actually be eaten. They can actually be eaten by animals that we call as being herbivores. But at some point, plants are going to die. Animals can also die. Therefore, there I can say there could be death. There could also be death of both plants and animals. But when both plants and animals die, it simply means that their dead bodies, fungi and bacteria will start working on them. They'll start decomposing them. And that will help to retain the stored carbon in plant and animal bodies back into the atmosphere. So there, if you want, you can say it is decay, or you can basically say decomposition. So that is what is going to happen. Like I mentioned, when animals die, their remains can be converted. When plants die, their remains can both be converted into fossil fuel. So at high temperature and high pressure over a long period of time, the remains of both plants and animals can be converted into fossil fuel, and that is what we simply call as being fossilization. But remember, these fossil fuels, once we extract them as humans, we are capable of using them, for example, in machineries, and therefore in machines, the process called combustion will take place, and that combustion will help to retain what we are calling as being the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. We don't need to forget, animals, we all carry out a process that helps to retain carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, which we simply call as being respiration. So this is a diagram that illustrates what we are calling as being the carbon cycle. And hence, you can get your 6 marks. Let's look at the B part there and see how you can go about to answer that B part. So according to the B part there, it says discuss the effects of. So they want us to discuss the effects of deforestation on the carbon cycle. So what are the effects of deforestation on the carbon cycle? Remember, deforestation is simply the cutting down of trees. Yeah, so the cutting down of trees, that is what we are calling as being deforestation. So what effect does it have on the carbon cycle? Now remember, in a forest, you are going to find a lot of plants, a lot of trees that are there, and these trees mainly they carry out what we call as being photosynthesis. They help to remove the carbon dioxide found in the atmosphere in a process called photosynthesis. So meaning when you cut down trees, it simply means that plants will no longer be able to remove the carbon dioxide that is found in the atmosphere. So in a sense, it will affect what we are calling as being the carbon cycle. So remember, we can simply say that I can simply just give you points. Remember, don't write in bullet point form. When you're given in your exam, you need to make sure that you paragraph. So your work is supposed to be paragraph, but as I give you, I may just give you some bullet point form that you're going to have. But remember, always when they tell you discuss, you need to explain in section B. You need to make sure that you paragraph what you're writing. Don't put them in bullet point form, because that is going to cost you marks. So discuss the effect of deforestation on the carbon cycle. So I can simply say that the effect, we can simply say that the effect of deforestation, so the effect of deforestation, on the carbon, effect of deforestation on the carbon cycle is also known as the greenhouse gas effect. So that is what we call it, the greenhouse gas effect, or so the greenhouse gas effect and what we simply call global warming. So how is this going to come about? How does that come about? Well, it comes about in the sense that you need to realize that trees and forests. We can maybe say trees and forest balance the amount. So they help to balance the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, through a process, through the process of photosynthesis, in which plants make their own food, using carbon dioxide. Yeah, so that is what is going to happen. So once plants make their own food using carbon dioxide, now imagine if plants are cut down, it simply means that the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is going to increase. So we can simply say that when there is an excess amount of CO2, carbon dioxide, in the atmosphere, a blanket, not the normal blanket that you have, but there's going to be a blanket of carbon dioxide, CO2, is actually created. And this blanket of carbon dioxide that is created, traps heat and prevent it from, we can say, prevent it from leaving the Earth's surface in the atmosphere. So that is what is going to happen. So you need to remember that, like I've said, what is going to happen is that when there's an excess amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, a blanket is actually going to be created. So now let me illustrate it this way. If you have the Earth here, and this is the ground, and of course we do have the sun. So what is going to happen? Heat will come into the Earth, and that heat that comes into the Earth needs to, to escape. We need to absorb a certain amount, and a certain amount goes. But if at all there are no trees, it simply means that a blanket, there will be a layer that is going to be created in the atmosphere, and that is what we are calling as being a blanket. It is simply a blanket of CO2. A layer of CO2 is going to be created in the atmosphere. Now, as this heat, instead of wanting to escape, it will not escape. As a result, it is going to be trapped by that blanket of carbon dioxide. So when it is trapped, it simply means that the heat, once it is trapped, it is going to cause, an increase in the temperature on the Earth's surface. So that is what we mean. So it will, because it is failing to leave the Earth's atmosphere. So what would be the effect, or what would be the result that is going to arise? Well, the excess, this excess heat, so we can say that this excess heat actually warms the Earth. So it actually, the temperature of the Earth is going to start warming. It is going to start rising. Yeah. But if there is too much of it, it causes global warming. So that results in what we are calling as being global warming, because the Earth is actually heating up. So it is actually going to result in global warming. In this case, when global warming result, you're going to find that even in areas where like there are polar ice caps, those will start melting. People that are found in such areas are simply are going to experience flooding. As a result, they are going to be displaced, from their home. But of course, remember, they talked about what effect does it have on the carbon cycle. So we can say deforestation also, apart from, raising, causing global warming, you are going to find that deforestation, maybe we can also say that deforestation, you know, changes the landscape. Yeah, so it actually helps to change again the landscape because there are many plants and trees in the earth that are going to be destroyed because of maybe global warming that is going to result. Yeah, so deforestation changes the landscape, because there will, so we can say there will not be any, okay, so we can simply say because there will not be, as maybe I can say, as many plants and trees to take in the Earth's CO2, carbon dioxide, and produce oxygen that is needed by animals. So you are going to find that once deforestation is there, it simply means that it actually changes the landscape in the sense that there will be few plants and trees available so that they can actually absorb carbon dioxide to produce what we are calling as being oxygen. So when that actually happens, this causes air pollution. Sometimes it may lead to air pollution and what we simply call as being greenhouse gas problems are actually going to result. That is what we mean. Okay, another effect is that we can say that deforestation has an effect. It also has an effect on us as people because lack of trees and plants means lack of oxygen for humans to breathe and live. So that is what we mean. So we'll not have enough oxygen for us to breathe and live, and actually that does affect what we are calling as being the carbon cycle. So you can talk about these points and many others when you're highlighting that. So let me just recap and tell you exactly what you can look at. So deforestation can cause greenhouse effect and global warming. So remember, trees are going to absorb much of the carbon dioxide through a process of photosynthesis because it helps to keep a balance of gases in the atmosphere. So now if there are no trees, they have been cut down, it simply means that plants will not be able to absorb and reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And if the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is a lot, there's excess amount, it helps to create a blanket of carbon dioxide, and that blanket will help to trap and prevent heat from escaping the Earth's surface, and that will cause temperatures on the Earth to start rising, and that leads to what we call global warming. Another effect of deforestation is that it actually changes the landscape in the sense that there would not be as many plants to take in the carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere. We need oxygen as animals, but of course when there's deforestation, it simply means plants cannot get in the carbon dioxide and give us the oxygen that we need. So indirectly, directly, it does affect what we call the carbon cycle, and that may lead to pollution and greenhouse gas problem. Remember, deforestation also affects people because when you lack trees, it means a lack of oxygen for us as human beings. and it will be a problem for us to live if we do not have enough oxygen. Well, watch out for my other videos so that we can talk about the nitrogen cycle and look at some few sample questions and how you can go about them. Please, you can like and subscribe so that you can continue to receive more videos.